This is a small and now rather ancient contribution to Babi studies. It comes from a set of 25 propositions which Moojan, Momen and myself appended to an article on the Babi movement, a resource mobilization perspective, which we published in 1986. The reference is given below. The purpose of these propositions in what was then still the early days of the modern development of Babi and Bahá'í studies was to lay out a set of statements about the religious, political and social significance of the Babi religion as a basis for further discussion and research. Some were responses to statements in the then secondary literature that Babism was, for example, an expression of class discontent or proto-nationalist or regional sentiment or political rebellion. All the propositions we present are open to debate and to falsification if they're shown to be wrong. Even though it's now, 35 years since we advanced these propositions, I think they still remain a useful starting point for research. They're divided into religious, political, and socio-economic factors. First then, religious factors. Number one, the Babi movement was a phenomenon within Shi'ism. It made no significant impact beyond the confines of Shi'ism. Two, the movement carried a strong religious charge. It gave expression to a number of powerfully evocative Shi'i motifs. Its leaders spoke to the religious concerns of the day and presented some Babi beliefs in a manner that was accessible to religiously inclined contemporaries. 3. More controversial beliefs were initially concealed from both non-Babis and from the Babi rank and file. 4. At a time of increasing emphasis on orthodoxy, as defined by the higher-ranking ulama, the movement gave voice to elements of the popular and dissenting religious traditions. 5. The movement's leaders initially called for a religious reformation and condemned clerical corruption. 6. Local variation in appeal was probably great. 7. The movement provided a comprehensive system of meaning and could ultimately provide an alternative sense of identity to Shi'ism. Initially, however, most Babis probably saw themselves as true Shi'is rather than as members of a separate religion. 8. There is little evidence for a contemporary crisis of meaning in Iran, other than the possible effects of repeated military defeat at the hands of the infidel Russians. There had been no traumatic challenges to the indigenous Shi'i religious tradition. The intellectual impact of the West was as yet extremely limited. Political factors. 1. The Babis were explicitly political in their demands. The Babs' claim to Mahdihood challenged the legitimacy of all existing institutions. Their attempt to establish a theocracy entailed the displacement or co-option of the existing regime. The government perceived, this is number 2, the government perceived the Babis as insurrectionaries and suppressed the movement accordingly. 3. Although there were individual Babis who were insurrectionary, it has not yet been established that the Babis as a community were consciously and preparedly insurrectionary. If they were, then their attempt was poorly coordinated for such a well-organized movement. 4. Both Babi radicalism and militancy and the outbreak of violence are best seen as part of a developing and interactive process. 5. Local factors were crucial. Where large Babi communities developed, they were inevitably drawn into the complex web of communal politics. 6. Pre-political discontent does not appear to have been a significant factor. Non-religious forms of political protest, such as insurrection, were readily available. 7. Anti-Qajar sentiment does not appear to have become a factor until the Babis had become alienated from the state. 8. There is no convincing evidence to support the thesis that Babism was proto-nationalist in its appeal. Socio-economic factors. Differential recruitment to the Babi movement proceeded along social networks and along class lines. A wide cross-section of urban social groups was included, and in certain areas village groups were also well represented. No effective contact was made with the nomadic tribes. 2. The thesis that Babism represented a form of bourgeois reformism is not well supported. Babi laws favouring merchant interests were a late addition and do not appear to have contributed to the religion's appeal. 3. Modernistic social reform was not a central part of Babi teaching, albeit that there was some amelioration in the social laws regarding women. 4. The popular radicalism of the later Babis may be seen as reflecting eschatologically heightened but traditional Islamic ideas of charity, equity, and the struggle against injustice. 5. The movement may have reflected opposition to the economic and political powers of the higher ulama, but this would have to be proved. 6. Divisions among Babis between radicals and conservatives proceeded on class lines. The more affluent laity and the more established clerics were generally the more conservative. 7. Babism expanded throughout the Shi'i heartlands of Iran. It was not an expression of regional sentiment. 8. Mid-19th century Iran was experiencing a profound and multifaceted economic crisis, but in what manner this may have been linked to the emergence of the Babi movement remains unclear. 9. The Babis were not anti-European. The Bab commended the adoption of various aspects of European life and manners. Those are our now ancient propositions. You can judge for yourself if they still have any relevance to contemporary Babi studies. Anyway, thank you for listening, and particular thanks to my patrons for their encouragement and support. If you want to support my channel, you're very welcome to do so. Like and share the videos, comment on them if you will. Subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos, and I'll give Patreon and PayPal links below if you want to provide practical support. Next week, I'll again resurrect an ancient paper, a note on Babi and Bahá'í numbers in Iran. Have a good day.